right. Oh, camera angle changes on when I do that. Okay. Well, how's it going, everybody? This is James Wilson with MTB Strength Training Systems, and today I wanted to talk about tourniquet use and, basically show you what is a tourniquet, how you can use it, take some of the mystery out of it. It's important, I think, for us as mountain bikers to consider carrying tourniquets on a more regular basis, make it part of our everyday carry, if you will, for our riding. And the reason is that what we do is a dangerous sport, right? Like, you can puncture yourself. I mean, if you think about it, if you're going to carry something to fix a flat, right? If you're going to carry something to fix a hole in your tire, then it just makes sense to maybe carry stuff that can fix a hole in you or another person, because if there's things on the trail that can punch a hole in a tire, there's things on the trail that can punch a hole in you too. And even beyond that, I've told the story many times over the last few weeks, but I knew a guy, an old riding buddy of mine, who actually had his handlebars puncture his femoral artery. He washed out, and just the way that it all worked out, he punctured his femoral artery with his handlebars and almost bled out. And luckily he was really close to the trailhead, and so help was able to get there, and he survived. But if you would have been much further out, then it probably wouldn't have been the same story. And so knowing how to deal with traumatic injuries and bleeding is an important part, again, of a concept. I did a podcast a few weeks ago, or I think, Monday, it came out Monday, on becoming the MTB warrior, and this concept of being the kind of person or rider who can bring the others back, if you will. Like, so if the poop hits the fan, are people looking to you for help, or are you part of the problem? All right, and so knowing how to deal with traumatic injuries, and particularly traumatic bleeding, I think is one of those important aspects of becoming that MTB warrior that we need more of. We need more people who are on the trail who can help, rather than are just like standing around looking for someone else to come and help them, so to speak. So when it comes to dealing with bleeding, there's some really basic things that you can do. Like, you can go to pretty much any drugstore today and get some gauze and some self-adhesive ACE bandages, right? So, stuff in the gauze, if you get a gash or a puncture wound, putting gauze in there and then having something to wrap around it, that'll go a long way towards helping with the bleeding, a lot better than the Band-Aids that come in most quote-unquote first aid kits that really aren't going to help much of anything legitimate, right? Most of the things those basic first aid kits are going to help, you'd be just as good just rubbing some dirt on it and wait until you get home to clean it up, right? So, like, being able to deal with a legitimate injury, you're going to need more than that. And so that's like the most basic thing you can do. You can also get specialized stuff, so things like quick Clot. Again, these are things that I actually carry with me myself on a daily basis, just around on a daily basis. I have something, this is called an ankle IFAK, which you can wear on your ankle, or I throw in my day bag. But I have these things on me all the time, because if you need a tourniquet, if you need to stop bleeding, you really need a tourniquet. You really need to stop that bleeding. It's not like you can go and look for these items when you need them. So but anyways, quick Clot is something that's specially designed to quickly clot blood, just like it sounds like. You have compression bandages. This one is actually an emergency trauma dressing, also known as an Israeli bandage, that is a compression bandage that has quick Clot already in it. Another thing to keep in mind is some gloves. So if you're going to be dealing with bleeding, then having some gloves, again, these are super small, they don't take up much space, but something that's good to have. And then most importantly is going to be your tourniquets. And so there's several different styles of tourniquets out there. Your basic one is going to be like the CAT style tourniquet, or combat application tourniquet. There's other types that aren't the CAT that are very similar in how they work. Then you also have this RATS tourniquet, and so both of these are options. Again, they're small, they're light, they're relatively cheap, so it makes it easy for you to add them to your pack and carry them. And so again, just real quick, there are some what have proven to be unfounded fears about the use of tourniquet and how using them can damage the limbs, and sometimes it's better to not use one than to use one, and that's been found to be unfounded. Again, like, when you look at it, you find that consistently you can leave a tourniquet on for up to 6 hours, and there'd be no real damage to the limb. I mean, even longer than that. Like some of the, in doing research on this, some of the, a lot of this comes from Army medics and people who deal with traumatic injuries like that on a regular basis, and how, they've seen people come in with tourniquets on for 6 plus hours, and there'd be no problem, no long-term problem with the limb they were on. So you don't need to worry about that. It's one of those things like, man, if you think you need a tourniquet, throw that bad boy on, and don't worry about you causing more harm than good in that instance there. And so again, the idea is not to be an emergency room doctor. That's not what you're doing with this. What you're doing with a tourniquet or any of these other things here is you're just simply stabilizing someone long enough for the real help to get there. And so again, if someone's bleeding out, they're not going to be able to wait until the real help can get there and sew them up and fix them up. And so you're not trying to fix anybody up. You're just trying to keep them alive long enough so that the real help can get there. And again, these skills are not super complicated. They're relatively basic skills, but they are skills. They're things that you need to learn, and they're tools that you need to know how to use and practice with. And so real quick, I'm going to show you how each one of these tourniquets work. These are my training tourniquets. You don't really want to practice with the tourniquets that you're going to use in an emergency situation, because they do get stretched out, and you don't want to have one possibly break on you because you've been using it for training over and over. So investing in a training tourniquet will help with that. But so these are my training tourniquets. So the cat tourniquet here, this is just a basic loop and windlass. I mean, if you've ever seen in the movies where someone tries to take a belt and a stick and stop the bleeding, that's what this is. And so you can just wrap this around the limb, and again, we'll pretend that I've got a cut on my arm. Now, no matter what style tourniquet you're going to use, the basic rules are going to be the same. You want to get it on the limb as high as you can. Now, again, you will hear some people suggest that you want to have it be just 2 to 3 inches above the wound itself, if you can find the wound itself. And while that's technically accurate, the reality is that you're going to have a tough time. It's going to be a lot going on. And so if you just think high and tight, that's going to be the easiest thing for you to do in an emergency situation. And so we're just going to get this tourniquet up high on my arm. And then what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it around the arm as tight as it will go. And then I'm actually going to flop this around. I should have checked this, because you want to have it so that the tail, when you're tightening it, you're pulling it towards your face. So if you're putting it on someone, it would be facing one way. And if you're putting it on yourself, it's going to be facing the other way. But you want to set it up. It's going to be easiest if you can pull it towards you. And so getting it set so that I can pull the tail towards me. And then you just pull it as tight as you can initially. And then you're going to get that, and then you're going to start turning the windlass here. And you're going to turn this until it's tight enough to stop the bleeding, which is going to be uncomfortable, very, very, very uncomfortable for the person you're doing this to. So, like if I just give this thing half a turn, this is already super uncomfortable. If I was to give this another 2 or 3 turns, which I could get out of this, it's going to stop my pulse in my arm. Like you can check and feel like, wow, that has stopped the blood for sure. But you're going to turn this until the bleeding is stopped. And then you secure the windlass there, and then this comes through, and then you would take this little white thing this white Velcro and pop it over the top to hold it in place, because that's the other thing, is you want to leave it on. So you don't want to loosen it up at any point. Just leave it on, even if the person's begging you to take it off because it's super uncomfortable. Leave it on, and if you move them or for any reason, then you need to recheck it. Make sure that it hasn't moved and you've started the bleeding again. So once you get that on there, you just leave it on until the real help gets there and they can deal with it. So the cat's style, or the rat's tourniquet here, is a little bit different. You can tell it's significantly smaller, and it is a basic trucker's hitch with an elastic loop. And so you're going to take your loop and put it around where you're going to go. And then again, you're going to start pulling that loop around. And you want to try to, don't put it on top of each other. You're trying to spread the compression out. And so, again, as you get it around, then you can hook it in the little loop there, and that'll leave it in place. And again, you want it to be tight enough to be uncomfortable and to stop the bleeding. Like, don't stop cranking until you've stopped the bleeding. And so with these rat's tourniquets here, I have read some stuff online in my research, some people that say they don't work or they don't have the best ratings or whatever. One of the training classes that I went to, there was an Army medic who was attached to Special Forces units over in Afghanistan, and I asked him about that because he was recommending the RATS tourniquet or saying that it was a good option. And so he told me that in his experience, the Special Forces guys over there were carrying these RATS tourniquets and using them, and he had seen them used to stop bleeding and that they worked. And so for me, that's good enough, and so that's why I feel good with using and recommending these. The RATS tourniquets is a side thing. These are also good for dogs. So if you have a trail mutt that goes with you and they get a gash or something and you need to stop some bleeding, then these RATS tourniquets are really good for animals as well. The cat's one here won't work quite as well on the dogs. I don't know if that's because this is the cat tourniquet and they don't like dogs. It's a bad joke. But anyway, so so that's about it. So my advice is that you start doing some research in this. There's a great free primer on how to handle a traumatic injury situation. The website's mountainmanmedical.com. In the description of this Facebook Live here, you'll find a link to that course. And so sign up for that course. Take that course. Just start educating yourself on what can you do if you came across one. What would you do if you're driving to work and you came across a car accident and you were the first person there and somebody needed help? Right? Like there's all sorts of situations where you could come across someone who needs just help being stabilized until the real help gets there. And again, the life that you save could be your own. You saw I was putting these things on myself. So these are things that you can apply yourself if needed. So yeah, start looking into a little bit more. That mountainmanmedical.com website's good. Buy a tourniquet, buy a training tourniquet so that you can practice with it. Because again, just like anything else, you're only going to be as good as your skills are, and so practicing those skills is something that you need to do that. So anyways, I think that's about it. Let me check my notes real quick. I got them on my phone because my printer broke. Usually I got my paper. It makes it a little easier. But no, man, I think I've got it all covered here. So anyway, so that's going to do it. Remember, you can check me out more, find out more at bikejames.com, where you can sign up for the newsletter. I got all sorts of free training programs and things you can check out there, more training videos. And again, I'm going to be doing more videos like this, exploring these different aspects of being the MTB warrior, things that go beyond just the bike and the bike skills, but also into these areas like medical, like bushcraft skills, like being able to, what happens if you ended up having to spend the night on the trail or got lost and needed to navigate your way back to the trailhead. So there's all sorts of things that go into being a competent person who is not going to get themselves into trouble and can actually help get other people out of trouble. And so I'm going to be posting a lot more stuff about that here as well. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Remember, go get a tourniquet. Be the person that if somebody needs help, that you can be that person that can help, right? Don't be standing there like everyone else with your hands open going like, man, I wish I could help, but you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the ability, and you don't have the tools to actually help. And it's not a great feeling. So avoid that feeling, get the training, get the tools, and be ready and willing to use them. So that's going to do it. And I'll talk to everybody next time.